Hello and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. This time we're going to be covering an interview with Ian Hazzikostas that is basically all about Warlords of Draenor. There's a ton of really cool information here, and yeah, it makes a hell of a read. One thing I do want to say, there is also a Warlords of Draenor gameplay video on my channel. I would have rolled this into that video, but unfortunately I only found out about this after the other one was already live on the internet, so couldn't exactly pull it down. Anyway, let's get into the actual interview itself. So, on the topic of dungeons, he said that from a designer's perspective, the redesign of the Upper Blackrock Spire dungeon has got a similar challenge to the creation of a new dungeon. If you weren't aware, Upper Blackrock Spire is actually being redone for Warlords of Draenor. He said that the base is there, but Blizzard is not just limited to increasing the health and damage of the mobs that were already inside it. He said that new mechanics are going to appear, and they should give a real challenge to players without losing that nostalgic side that returns when we go to a past instance. So that's kind of interesting. Personally, I'm maybe not as excited about Upper Blackrock Spire being revamped. I'm sure a lot of people that played heavily during vanilla will be though, so at least that's some good news. Next, on the front of raiding, well, Ian Hazzikostas is the lead encounter designer, so he definitely had a lot to say about this. First of all, he said that it's now going to be easier to determine what guild is the best PvE guild. At the minute, some guilds are 10-man and then some are 25, and it's really hard to say which one is the best. With the introduction of the mythic raiding system though, it just should kind of flat out that top end of raiding and put things in a bit of a more clear ranking, which should be rather nice. It will certainly make it a more readable and perhaps slightly more enjoyable experience for those watching on, which I think is very good. Then he also said that the opening raid of Highmull will basically open up at the release of the expansion just like Mogushan Vaults did with Pandaria. They're considering releasing it on the second week so the players can enjoy just a week of leveling quietly without feeling obliged to rush to 100 so they can start raiding. Highmull's actually going to be located in Nagrand, and it will have 7 bosses, which sounds very nice. It's a pretty nice, decent way just to start off the expansion, ease you into one raid, and then, of course, the next thing he said is that the second raid, which is called Blackrock Foundry, will be open a few weeks after that, and it's going to have 10 bosses in it. The first tier of raiding, because of that in total, is going to have 17 bosses. Now, in case you can't count, 17 is a pretty big number when it comes to bosses per tier, so that is definitely nice to see. Then, Ian Hazzikostas also said that while at the opening of a raid, every boss will be available on normal mode and heroic mode, it will not be like that for Looking for Raid. Looking for Raid is still going to have an opening up schedule just like with Pandaria. Basically, players must first discover a boss with their friend and guild, and they don't want to open up into LFR on day one, because then people just rush through that on LFR to get the new item level of gear, and really, they just kind of ruin the experience for themselves in a way, so I think that's definitely the right way to open it up. He also said that the most successful boss in Mists of Pandaria was Lei Shen. He said that the mechanics were both simple to understand, but actually quite difficult to counter, and that this made a lot of the different parts of the fight feel interesting to players. He said that the team is very proud of the boss, and we should expect the same level of epicness from the bosses in Warlords of Draenor. I think that's definitely great to hear, and one thing I'd like to say about Lei Shen and why it was so fun is because there was so much personal responsibility. You had to maybe run into the certain balls thing, the things that would fall from the sky, you had to run into them, that was cool. There was the static charges and just all the different coordination, even with the intermission phase. There was a lot to do on an individual basis, which I think was very, very good. Anyway, so the next thing he said is that raids should in general be less linear than they were in Pandaria. The objective is to make them a little bit more like Ulduar, where basically you can choose what boss you want to do based on the roster that you have available in your raid. He said also that this is only feasible in a raid that consists of several wings, so we should definitely not expect to see a whole bunch of linear raids in Draenor. This is something I'm very happy about, actually. One of the best things, in addition to what he said about being able to choose a boss that suits your comp, but one of the great things is just a change of pace, a change of scenery, and being able to shake it up a little bit. When you are going through the same 14 bosses every night in Siege of Orgrimmar, it gets a bit it just kind of grinds down on you, wears you out a little bit. I think this would sort of happen less if there was a less linear design. Yeah, way to go mincing my words. let's move on to the next point before I completely brain damage myself, and he finally said, on the topic of raiding, that the encounters are going to include a lot more mechanics that are class or rule specific, especially for healers. In Warlords of Draenor, Blizzard wants to deploy more interesting mechanics for people where their role will not be just kind of spamming the same ability all the time. And I think that's interesting, especially because he said, especially for healers. I actually remember there being a recent tweet, I'm not too sure if it was from Ian Hazzikostas himself or maybe it was from Watcher, but basically what they said is that healing was sometimes a little bit stagnant in Mists of Pandaria, and they hadn't really just nailed down the gameplay, so hopefully by putting in some more like healer-specific rules or mechanics in the fights, that it just should make healing a little bit more fun, give you some more reactive gameplay, aside from OMG damage phase. So I think that should be good, and if you are a healer, then maybe you're going to have a little bit more of an engaging gameplay experience, which should be quite cool. And then, of course, the rest of us are also going to get little mechanics that are tailored to our class or role, so that'll be nice as well. Okay, so that is raids finished. The next topic is world bosses. He said that the bosses outside are going to basically just represent the most large and brutal creatures on Draenor, which obviously is pretty damn good in my book, really. I love killing big things, especially when they have shiny loot, and that is probably what they're going to do. He also said that one of them is an ancestor of Gron, but unlike, well, he's like Gron, but he's just, about 4 times larger, a little bit bigger, and he's also made of stone and has mystical powers. So I'm guessing this is going to be one of the harder ones. Maybe it's similar to Ordos in terms of it's the premium tier, or maybe Undasta, the harder world boss. So that would definitely be quite nice. Then next, he said that the second world boss will be part of the huge plants that live in a jungle of Draenor. So does this mean we'll be finding some sort of large vicious plant in maybe the Tanan jungle? I think that would be pretty cool, actually. So yeah, I'm up for killing a plant. That seems fair enough. And then he also said that the world bosses will be activated gradually, knowing that the first one is going to be unlocked at the launch of the expansion, and then they'll be sort of added in subsequently. I think that's nice. Drip feeding content is a good way to do it. Of course, I prefer that content is not held back for the sake of drip feeding, but if they can make more fights, more bosses, etc., and then just keep on pumping them out, then I think that's a very good way of doing things. Then next, he said that loot will be relevant to the tier in which the boss is unlocked, with the goal being that when Blizzard releases the third boss, his loot will be, let's just say, for example, the third world boss, that third world boss's loot will be relevant to what you can currently loot in the current tier of PvE. So, yeah, well, I mean, that makes sense. It's just like when, say, patch 5.2 came out, then the Nalak gear was relevant to 5.2. Just, makes sense. Now, there's another very interesting thing here, and it was called the Crucible, but honestly it sounds a little bit like Proving Grounds. I'll just go through the quote here. The Crucible will be updated in Warlords of Draenor, and Blizzard also wants to extend the functionality. It will also serve as a prerequisite to raids. Players will, for example, get into a dungeon queue, and then they will have to at least have a silver medal in the Crucible. So yeah, look, this is based on a French translation, so maybe Proving Grounds gets translated into Ordeal. Anyway, so if you want to make it into an instance with your friends, you don't have to worry about a Crucible rank or anything like that, but for a random group, you must be able to prove that you can manage certain game mechanics and abilities. He said that this will be ready for the launch of Warlords of Draenor, and the Blizzard believes that this will make the overall experience in LFD and LFR better for players, as every player will have a minimum knowledge to face a boss. I think this is an extremely intelligent decision, actually. Toxicity is definitely one of the larger problems that we currently face in gaming at the minute, so the good news is that hopefully this should take down the toxicity a little bit. And look, I know that a silver medal in a Proving Ground isn't particularly hard, but you know what, from some of the bad experiences that I've had in various different pugs, etc., there's definitely people that get in there that wouldn't be able to get a silver medal in Proving Grounds, so this should at least cut out some of the problems from those systems. Next, he talked about boosting to level 90. He said that the level 90 boost will operate differently if you already have a high-level character. Not specifically sure how, but one of the things that he did say is that if your first if it is your first character and you go straight to level 90, then the game is going to ask you to use a few starter skills to familiarize yourself with the game and your class, and that you will unlock skills even more gradually if it is your first level 90. So basically, they really are putting on the training wheels for people who just get into the game, buy a 90, and just skip half the leveling. Honestly, I still kind of wish you couldn't do that, but whatever. Not really a point to make right now, let's move on. He also said that the Boost 90 will be available before the release of Warlords of Draenor, as we previously knew, and the Blizzard are aware of the problems that are present, so those who benefit from the boost will mainly be players who already have one or more characters. I'm not exactly sure if this means you can only use the boost to 90 beforehand if you already have a level 90, but it certainly seems like that. Maybe it is like that because they don't currently have that training system in place. I'm not particularly sure. Then next, he said that Blizzard wants players to benefit from this feature as soon as possible, but at the same time they recognize that there is a danger of players mismanaging their characters and having a whole bunch of them, and just a general lack of knowledge hurting the experience for everyone. It's definitely good that they are aware of that, and I definitely hope that they remain aware of that, and make sure that that doesn't end up being a large problem for the game. Then next, finally he just talked about Ashran and then a little bit about Garrosh. So, the Ashran PvP area is going to essentially draw a lot of inspiration from Alterac Valley, so the battle could end up lasting 30 or 40 hours before you see a winner, which I think, by the way, really cool. He then also said that you could go into the arena for other PvP things. So, for example, you could go into the arena and then retrieve resources for your faction. However, the opposing faction will also be able to do this, which will naturally cause a PvP element in the game to occur. Now, that's basically me just quoting the translation there. I think what this means is that whenever you PvP in an arena or something like that, does it perhaps add to some faction-based resource pool, and that the same thing happens to the other faction on your server? Or maybe your battle group? I'm not really sure. One thing though, I think I'm actually 99% sure that the Ashran zone is going to be cross-realm, so maybe it's on a battle group by battle group basis. Not specifically sure on that one, but I love the idea of it being a little bit more like Alterac Valley. Because old school Alterac Valley is something I was never able to do, and I really wish I was able to, because it seems pretty damn interesting, honestly. Anyway, so finally he said that if Garrosh is present in the expansion, it is unlikely that we will face him again. There are many other enemies to fight and die rather than going back and to just fight Garrosh, because we've already done that. So yeah, chances are Garrosh is just going to be dealt with in the questing experience. And that is it for the interview. Overall, I think it was very interesting. We got a lot of things confirmed. This Crucible feature is something that I'm very interested in. And also the world bosses. I like the idea of these kind of massive, giant, and hopefully relatively hard world bosses. It would be nice if one or two of them weren't complete cakewalks, like, say, the Sha or the Celestials. Anyway, so yeah, that is pretty much it for the video. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and it really does help out the channel. And thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.